Well, this week we've seen the Seinfeld policy launch. All the build-up, and then it was all about nothing. No new policy, net zero new policy, net zero legislation, net zero modelling and net zero unity from those opposite. They left it to the last possible minute to outline a scam that leaves everything to the last possible minute. It's out on the never-never, because this government will never, ever take climate change seriously. After all of the build-up, we just got a glossy brochure. When launching it, they said the word plan 94 times. 94! Well, saying it doesn't make it true. And the fact is that the Prime Minister isn't known as Scotty for marketing for nothing, because that is what we saw. The brochure mentions the word modelling 44 times but doesn't produce any. Maybe it's in a blind trust. Those opposite are simply not fair dinkum. They're led by a Prime Minister who said that electric vehicles would end the weekend, who said that batteries for renewables were as useful as the big banana or the big prawn, who said that the renewable energy target was nuts, who says they're going to reach a 35% reduction by 2030, but they can't change the Abbott target of 26 to 28 because that would be different from the last election. But at the last election, they opposed net zero by 2050, the whole basis of what this has allegedly been about. But when Australia was burning down during the Black Summer, they were apoplectic at the idea that there was a connection between the bushfires and the drought that came beforehand and climate change. To talk about that was woke in a city. But now that the Prime Minister wants to strut across the global stage in Glasgow, they say, oh no, net zero by 2050. With all this new technology, it's just going to happen. Well, Australia can spot a fraud from a long way away, and they're onto the marketing guy. But it gets worse, because when he jets out, as of tomorrow, Barnaby Joyce will be the acting Prime Minister of Australia. The bloke who knocked off Michael McCormack, a good man, in order to strongly oppose net zero. That was the whole platform of why the coup happened. And now he didn't support it, but it's National Party policy apparently anyway. Still doesn't support it like a majority of National Party cabinet ministers. This is what he said when he became the leader, talking in the third person, as sometimes people with particular afflictions do. The likelihood of Joyce getting endorsement from his party room to agree with net zero is zero. That's where net zero lies. That's what he said. He doesn't even support it. He described climate change as a scam. And remember the bizarre video in the paddock, shouting at clouds, with the cows all around him, saying, I just don't want the government in my life. Except he doesn't mind the Deputy Prime Minister's pay. He doesn't mind that. He doesn't mind making a career out of taxpayer directly funds. But what we know from the announcement yesterday is, one, that they can produce glossy documents, but two big changes. One, that Keith Pitt, the Minister for Resources, is now in the Cabinet. This is a guy who said that solar and wind don't work at night. This is the guy who gets a shock every time he turns the tap and water comes out because it's not raining outside. He doesn't get the whole idea about storage of renewables and what's happened. Just doesn't get it. So that was the one change. That's the one job we know occurred. But there's another change as well, a productivity commission review. Every 5 years, they're going to have a look at it, see how it's going. But the Deputy Prime Minister, who that's all that we know came out of this, says this, I use them when I run out of toilet paper. That's what he had to say about Productivity Commission reports. That's how seriously he takes it. Barnaby Joyce is the whoopee cushion of Australian politics. You know you shouldn't laugh when you hear him make noise, but somehow you just kind of have to. You just kind of have to. And as we sit here in question time, listening to the human whoopee cushion opposite, you've just got to have a chuckle. We need subtitles up on the screen to explain it, because the Nationals have become a clown show, and he is the perfect figurehead. He's trying to turn the word legislation into a pejorative term. Someone should tell him that's what Parliament does. That the debates that we have in Parliament are about legislation and are about laws. But he is trying to turn it into a pejorative term. And the newsflash for him, one, that's what parliaments do, but there's a second newsflash as well. Investors need certainty going forward. That's why you have legislation, so that you can go forward. So when Dennis Denuto in the Castle spoke about laws being about the vibe, it was satire. They think it was a documentary. They just don't get it at all. Well, we on this side, of course, have had a net zero by 2050 policy for a considerable period of time. We back that up in terms of how you get there with a rewiring the nation policy, $20 billion announced in my first budget reply to make sure that electricity transmission is brought into the 21st century. The most significant, easy thing that you can do between now and 2030. We've got a policy for community batteries, making sure that you can maximise what you get out of solar energy. We have a plan to make electric vehicles cheaper by reducing taxes, something that the government we asked about today, and they don't seem to comprehend that that's a large part of the high price for electric vehicles. If you want to change behaviour, you do make it cheaper. But of course they said electric vehicles would end the weekend. We want to make sure that Australian workers benefit. That's why we have a new energy apprenticeships plan. And we want new industry, and we've said how we'll pay for it with a $15 billion National Reconstruction Fund to transform existing industries, but also to talk about the opportunity that's there. We do have abundant resources in this country. I've got an idea. How about we use those resources to make things here, to create jobs here? And that's why it fits in with our Buy Australia plan that we have as well. Now, they've adopted net zero by 2050, but we'd encourage them to adopt all the rest of that plan as well, because we'll have more to say. We'll have more to say, but we've already made significant announcements going forward. Now, the Prime Minister does leave for Glasgow tomorrow. Glasgow, of course, gave the world Billy Connolly, so they recognise a joke when they see one. Now, you have to wonder what they'll make of this Prime Minister walking into that conference. The guy, he'll stand up and he'll say, technology, we want technology. And they'll go, hang on, isn't this the guy who said that electric vehicles would end the weekend? Isn't this the mob that said that renewable energy targets are bad? Isn't this the government that says that solar and wind don't work unless the sun's shining and the wind is blowing? Isn't this the government that tried to get rid of the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, ARENA, that did get rid of the fund that was there for carbon capture and storage?
They don't mention that.
They never mentioned that. They got rid of the fund that was there. So now this Prime Minister says that he accepts that climate change is real because he knows that his position on net zero and opposition was simply unsustainable. But there's no conviction there. This guy is all show and no go. He's not fair income, and Australians know that. All marketing, no substance. What we need to deal with the challenge of climate change is a government that understands the opportunity that meeting that challenge represents. An opportunity for Australia to take advantage that we're in the fastest growing region of the world in human history. An opportunity to create jobs by becoming a renewable energy superpower for the world.